everybody. So what is the ancient concept known as the assemblage point, and why on earth should you care about it? That's what we're going to be talking about today. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Karen Bentley. I'm the creator of the Warriors Way Webinars and Bootcamp. And I'll tell you more about that at the end if you're interested. But for now, let's get back to the assemblage point, which was introduced to the world, or should I say, reintroduced to the world by the author, Carlos Castaneda. And this was done in 1984 through this book, The Fire from Within. He introduced the concept of the assemblage point in this book, and then in his later works, and especially in this one, in 1987, Tales of Power. And I'm going to be reading to you quotes from these two books in just a minute. But this is how the concept came back into our consciousness. It has been around a long time, but it was almost forgotten. And if not for Castaneda, it would be lost today. So Castaneda explains to us that the assemblage point is this collection of our life filaments. So we're all comprised of a bunch of life filaments or life emanations or life strands, however you want to refer to them. And those strands are bunched together in a band, which is the assemblage point. And the place where that assemblage point is positioned on your bands, whether it's way up or way down or in the middle, that determines your feelings, your behavior, your perception of the world, and in fact, it determines the world that you perceive as real. And the important thing that you need to know about the assemblage point is that it can be moved. It can be moved up or it can be moved down. And anytime it moves, even if it's just the slightest shift, it produces profound transformation. And the average man can experience profound transformation, like such that, you'll say, well, I'm not the same person, because you've had this profound transformation. And it can change the way you feel. It can change the way you behave. It can change what you perceive. So it's a very powerful experience to change your assemblage point. The other thing you need to know about the assemblage point is that it's not actually a place in your body. It is just outside the body and what some people refer to as the aura or the energy field or the luminous shell, whatever you want to call it. That's where your assemblage point is. It's not exactly in your body. And Castaneda came to know about the assemblage point through his apprenticeship with a Yaqui shaman, the Nagual Don Juan Matos. A Nagual is a guide, a leader, a teacher of these ancient practices to warriorhood and to sorcery. Sorcery is being connected to source. And so the Nagual's job is to train the group of warriors in his responsibility, and also to find the next Nagual who will keep these bits of wisdom and these esoteric practices alive. That's the Nagual's job. And this is, enter Carlos Castaneda. Castaneda, at the time he met Don Juan, Castaneda was an anthropology student at UCLA. He was a very ambitious Peruvian American. And it was in the 1960s at the emergence of the psychedelic drug culture. And not very much was known about psychedelic plants. And Castaneda thought that he would make his mark by becoming an expert, by unwrapping and finding new information about these hallucinogenic plants. And so he set off on a mission to find someone who could teach him about it. And he thought that person was Don Juan. And he actually was trying to con Don Juan for this information. He was trying to slyly pimp it out of him. And Don Juan, on the other hand, was looking for the Nagual who was going to replace him, who he would train and who would replace him. And Don Juan was an impeccable being, meaning that he always used right energy, and he lived in service to spirit, meaning that he took direction and right action from spirit. And so when Don Juan met Castaneda, he was directed by spirit that Castaneda was supposed to be the next Nagual. And even though Castaneda was the most unlikely apprentice, I mean, he wasn't a Yaqui, he wasn't from Mexico, Don Juan could see that he was pimping him and using him, you know, and he wasn't the very conventional, he could see also that Castaneda didn't have the energy configuration of other Naguals in Don Juan's lineage. But he trusted, he believed, he was guided by spirit. And so immediately he accepted Castaneda under his tutelage, and he began teaching him in the ways of the ancient world. And this is how we know about the assemblage point, through this experience. And over the course of many years, Don Juan manipulated Castaneda's assemblage point because he was skilled. He was skilled in using unseen forces and energy, and he could do magnificent feats like shape-shifting and a body double and other amazing feats. And so he also could manipulate Castaneda's assemblage point. And when he did this, Castaneda described the experience as, quote, non-ordinary reality, that it was real, but it wasn't ordinary reality. And it has become very trendy and popular these days to trash Castaneda and to challenge his writing and to claim that it's either fiction or partial fiction, or, you know, that it shouldn't be taken seriously. And I strongly disagree, and I am not in that camp. I am a monumental fan of the wisdom that comes to us through Don Juan, and I'm enormously grateful to Castaneda for being compulsive and crazy and anal enough to take copious notes of his conversations with Don Juan that would otherwise be lost to us. And I'm likewise grateful to Don Juan for taking on Castaneda as his apprentice without any question. So this is what happens. I first became familiar with Castaneda's work, and it was either 1984 or 1985. This book was published, The Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge. This was the first book in his series of 12 books. 8 of them are about his experiences with Don Juan. And this book came out in 1968. It's now 2024, 56 years later, and this book is still a bestseller on Amazon. How is that possible? My opinion is that when people read wisdom and truth that resonates with them, they recognize it. And that's why this book is still popular. It's number 5, I believe, in shamanism, and it's number 10 in Native American religions. So it's still performing strong. I have read all of Castaneda's works many times, as you can see. This is what my books look like. They're all ripped, they're dog-eared, they're marked up, they're, you know, I've got stars and underlines everywhere. I've read them all several times, but most importantly, I've read the quotes directly from Don Juan many times. And at once upon a time, a long time ago, speaking of arrogance, I thought that I would be the world's foremost expert on Castaneda's work, other than Castaneda, of course. And I'll tell you about that at the end if you want to hear it. It's a cute little story of ambition and passion. So anyways, back to the assemblage point. I'm going to be reading to you quotes from these 2 books. First, the Fire from Within, and then Tales of Power, and then I'll explain to you where I come into all this and how you can put this to work in your life right now, today, if you're interested, if you find it compelling and magnetic and magical. I've read many other works about warriorhood, and you know, I'm not complaining about anybody. They're all fine. I've read many fine works about warriorhood, but to me, none of them have the magic and the magnetism and the mystery that Don Juan provides to us. And his wisdom had me at hello, so to speak, and it still has me now. I'm quite the fan of Don Juan through Castaneda. It took me a while to warm up to Castaneda himself, only because, he had his own agenda, and he didn't realize what he had stumbled on, and it took him a while to figure it out. So, it was his resistance that I think I was feeling. I mean, I appreciate it and enjoy him now, but at first, I wasn't the biggest fan of him, but always of Don Juan. So let me read to you these quotes and see where we are with them. So this is from this book, The Fire from Within, page 82. Anyone who succeeds in moving his assemblage point to a new position is a sorcerer. Page 108. The particular alignment that we perceive as the world is the product of the specific spot where our assemblage point is located on our cocoon. Page 110. The old seers discovered that the assemblage point is not on the physical body, but in the luminous shell, in the cocoon itself. Page 131. Everything seers do is something he had talked about since the day we met, which was stopping the internal dialogue. He stressed over and over that the internal dialogue is what keeps the assemblage point fixed to its original position. Page 132. He said that seers see that infants have no fixed assemblage point at first. Page 133. He maintained that every one of us, in his own right, is a masterful magician, and that our magic is to keep our assemblage point unwaveringly fixed. Page 141. Now, the last truth is that once the assemblage point moves beyond a certain limit, it can assemble worlds entirely different from the world we know. Page 154. The position of the assemblage point on man's cocoon is maintained by the internal dialogue, and because of that, it is a flimsy position at best. That's why men and women lose their minds so easily, especially those whose internal dialogue is repetitious, boring, and without any depth. Page 167. The most important thing the new seers needed was practical steps in order to make their assemblage point shift. Page 179. The real feat is to make the assemblage point shift from its normal setting to the point of no doubt. Page 199. The way to move that point is to establish new habits and to will it to move. Also page 199. The position of the assemblage point dictates how we behave and how we feel. These next quotes are from Tales of Power. Page 35. Mental balance is nothing but the fixing of the assemblage point on the one spot we're accustomed to. Page 82. They soon discovered that if unusual behavior was practiced systematically and directed wisely, it eventually forced the assemblage point to move. Page 144. He said that everything sorcerers did was done as a consequence of a movement of their assemblage point, and that such movements were ruled by the amount of energy sorcerers had at their command. Page 150. It was therefore safe to say that any movement of the assemblage point away from its customary position resulted in a movement away from man's self-reflection and its concomitant self-importance. Page 159. Any human being who would follow a specific, simple sequence of actions can learn to move the assemblage point. Page 161. I have insisted to the point of exhaustion that there are no procedures in sorcery. The only thing that matters is the movement of the assemblage point. Page 228. Now, more than anything else, man needs to be taught the secrets of the assemblage point. Page 229. The real difficulty is having energy. If one has energy, once the assemblage point moves, inconceivable things are there for the asking. So, as for me, once upon a time, many years ago, I indulged the fantasy that I might be the world's foremost expert on Castaneda, as I previously said to you. And I spent a year compiling a very painstaking collection of a glossary of terms that were used by Don Juan to explain warriorhood and sorcery and Nagualism to Castaneda. And so, for example, if you wanted to know about the assemblage point, you would just go to my handy glossary and you would look up assemblage point and you would find every quote about the assemblage point from every one of Castaneda's books, all in one handy dandy, easy to use reference glossary. And I did this before word processing was widely available, on a manual typewriter with my little jar of whiteout in hand. And, it took me forever. And I remember vividly writing my very first book proposal to Simon & Schuster, the publisher of Castaneda's works, and explaining my amazing glossary and my great passion for Castaneda's work. And of course, they didn't answer. And, at the time I was too immature, too inexperienced, and too lacking in self-confidence to make my voice heard, to keep at it until they paid attention to me. In any case, I still have this glossary. I move it with me every time I move. I still refer to it. These quotes today about the assemblage point were from that glossary. And so I have had this lifelong interest and fascination with the concept of warriorhood as described by Don Juan. And this influenced me in quite a large way to develop my own program, which I call the Warriors Way. And one of the things that I most wanted to do was fill in the missing blanks that Castaneda left us with. I mean, I love his work. I love these works, and I'm grateful. But it took Castaneda a long time to figure out what he was dealing with. He didn't really recognize this for the path to freedom and enlightenment and sorcery that it was until he was fairly far along on the path. And so he didn't present the material to us in an organized way, in a how-to way. There's holes, there's missing pieces. Sometimes his explanations aren't great. And so this has always exasperated me. And where I come in is that I have, my superpower is that I can see the big picture, and I'm a great organizer. And, I'm able to do what Castaneda didn't do. I can complete the story. And this is my Warriors Way program that I now offer to the world, in part based on Castaneda's lifetime body of work. So, in particular, this is the really exciting point. In particular, my apprentice program incorporates the deliberate movement of the assemblage point. And it's done through the essential habit-breaking life skill called stopping. If you sustain the stopping movement, your assemblage point will move. There are other ways to move your assemblage point, but this is the easiest, the fastest, the most efficient. And it's something, everybody's able to do in the convenience of their own home and in their own lives. And so I've made this, I intend to keep this concept alive, to keep this practice alive, because it leads to profound inner strength, profound personal power, and to a complete change of self. You will say to yourself, I'm brand new, and I want to make that experience available to anyone who wants it. So check out my Warriors Way program at my website, KarenBentley.com, and in particular, the Apprentice program. There's nothing like it anywhere. I promise you. It's extraordinary. It's just, I'm so excited to bring it to the world. So if you like this content, you know what to do. Smash that like button. Consider subscribing. I would love to have you join the Warrior family. And come back. Oh, write me a comment. Tell me what you think about the assemblage point. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And bye for now. Mwah. Big love at you. Come back.